The courtroom was eerily silent. The moment the judge called the session to order, Liam Cooper felt his heart race. He was only 10 years old, but today, he was standing alone in front of the most important people in his life. And the weight of it all, the sheer magnitude of what was happening, made his palms sweat. "Liam Cooper," the judge said, his voice booming in the quiet room, "do you understand the seriousness of the situation you're in?" Liam straightened up, meeting the judge's eyes without flinching. His voice, calm but determined, cut through the tension. "Yes, Your Honor. I understand." On the other side of the courtroom, his father, Vincent Cooper, sat behind a glossy, expensive desk, wearing a smug grin that made Liam's blood boil. Vincent's sharp suit, worth more than the combined total of Liam and his mother's monthly rent, gleamed under the bright lights. The arrogance in his eyes was unmistakable. "I don't need a child telling me how to run my life," Vincent muttered under his breath, but Liam heard every word. But Liam didn't flinch. Not this time. Not when he had everything prepared. The courtroom buzzed with whispers, and a sense of unease filled the air. The case wasn't about custody. Not really. It was about money, power, and control. But for Liam, it was about his future, his life, and the family that had been manipulated, crushed, and discarded for too long. The story had begun months ago, when a letter arrived in the mailbox that would change everything. It wasn't an ordinary letter. It wasn't just another bill or some charity request. This was a letter from Vincent Cooper's lawyer. And with it came the cold realization that his estranged father, who hadn't been part of his life for nearly 10 years, was now seeking full custody. The letter read, "Dear Ms. Cassandra Cooper, we hereby inform you that Mr. Vincent Cooper has initiated legal proceedings to obtain full custody of your son, Liam Cooper. A hearing has been scheduled for this upcoming date. Please prepare accordingly. Sincerely, Avery Daniels, ESQ." Liam had barely understood what it meant, but the word sent a shiver down his spine. Full custody. His father hadn't even shown an ounce of interest in him in years. And now he was coming for him, coming to tear apart everything that had given Liam a sense of safety. And that's when Liam knew. His father wasn't interested in him. No. This was about the inheritance. The millions of dollars tied up in a trust his grandmother had set up. Millions that would only be accessible if Liam's father gained legal control over him. It was all about money. For weeks, Liam kept his suspicions to himself. He couldn't tell his mom, Cassandra. She already had enough to deal with. As a single mother working 2 jobs as a nurse's assistant, she was exhausted. She didn't need to hear about how her ex-husband was now plotting to destroy their lives. But Liam wasn't like other kids. He didn't accept things as they were. He studied. Day after day, he scoured the library, reading legal books, researching children's rights, and learning about family law. He wasn't just a kid trying to survive. He was preparing for a war. The more Liam learned, the more he realized just how unprepared everyone else was for what was about to happen. His mother had no money for lawyers. No connections. She was a fighter, but this was bigger than anything she had ever dealt with. As the trial loomed closer, Liam began to form a plan. He had to fight. For himself. For his mom. For the truth. "Mom, we have to prepare for this," Liam told Cassandra one evening after school. She looked at him, concern clouding her face. "Liam, I know it's hard, but you don't have to worry about this. We'll get through it like we always do." Liam shook his head. "No, Mom. We can't do this the same way. I need you to trust me. I've got a plan." And now, in the courtroom, with the judge's gavel pounding in the background, Liam was ready. The moment the judge asked, "Liam Cooper, do you wish to speak?" Liam took a deep breath. This was his moment. "Yes, Your Honor. I have evidence that my father is not seeking custody for the right reasons. He doesn't want me. He just wants my inheritance. Liam's voice rang out, sharp and clear. Across the room, Vincent's expression froze. For the first time, a hint of fear flickered in his eyes. The lawyer, Avery Daniels, stood up, adjusting his glasses with a forced smile. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. A child should not be making accusations like this. Liam didn't back down. It's not an accusation. It's the truth. He turned to the judge. My father doesn't care about me. He only wants to control the money. The room went silent. The tension was unbearable. Liam reached into his backpack and pulled out a folder. It was thick with research, with documents he had painstakingly gathered over the past several weeks. This is everything, he said, opening the folder and spreading the documents across the table. Here are the records of my father's lawsuit. Here's the evidence of how he manipulated the inheritance trust. Here's proof that he has never cared for me, but only for the wealth he believes is rightfully his. Vincent's jaw tightened as he glanced at his lawyer, his face now pale. The smug confidence that had once dominated him was slipping away. Liam wasn't finished. There's more, Liam added, his voice steady. I found a letter. A letter from my grandmother. It states that the trust will only be accessible if I am in my father's custody. He's trying to steal my future, Your Honor. The judge leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Are you saying that your father is using you for money? Liam nodded, locking eyes with Vincent. Yes, Your Honor. That's exactly what I'm saying. The courtroom fell silent once again. It was as if the room had collectively held its breath. Vincent's lawyer, Avery Daniels, stumbled over his words. This is preposterous. The boy is making baseless claims. These documents are not legitimate. But Liam, unfazed, held up another paper. This is the original trust agreement. My grandmother signed it when I was born. It's all here. And when my father learned that I was the sole beneficiary of the trust, he decided to come back into my life. The judge turned to Vincent, his eyes cold. Mr. Cooper, do you have any response to this? Vincent hesitated, his voice low and shaky. This is a misunderstanding. I only want what's best for my son. Liam smiled, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was a smile of someone who had fought long enough to see the truth laid bare. If you really cared about me, you wouldn't have waited until I had money to fight for me. The room was in chaos now. The truth was out. Liam had done it. He had exposed his father for who he really was. But this was just the beginning. Liam sat in his bedroom that evening, his mind racing. His mother, Cassandra, had left for her second shift at the nursing home, and the house was quiet except for the occasional creak of the floorboards. The trial was over for now, but the battle was far from finished. Mom doesn't know how much danger we're in, Liam muttered to himself, staring at the stack of papers on his desk. These weren't just any papers. These were pieces of his life, pieces of a puzzle that, when put together, could end his father's plans to take everything from him. Liam's mother, as strong and loving as she was, had no idea how ruthless Vincent could be. The man who had abandoned Liam for 9 years now wanted him back, only for the wealth tied to his name. Liam had spent the last few weeks digging through every document he could find, poring over legal texts, and sifting through old files. He knew more about family trusts and inheritance law than most adults. But now, the real challenge would begin. He had his plan, and it was bold. It wasn't just about defending his mother's rights to raise him. It was about proving Vincent wasn't fit to be his father. Proving that this wasn't about family at all. This was about a man who saw his son as nothing more than a ticket to a fortune. The next day, Liam walked to school like it was any other morning, but his mind was a whirlwind. He didn't tell Cassandra everything. He couldn't. She'd worry. And what she didn't know wouldn't hurt her, yet. Liam had to be the one to fix this. At school, his best friend, Ben, met him at the gate. Ben was a good kid, always full of energy and curiosity, but today, Liam saw the concern in his eyes. "What happened yesterday, Liam?" Ben asked, lowering his voice so no one could overhear. "Your dad looked like he was about to explode." Liam glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "You won't believe it, Ben. I've got everything on him, his lies, his schemes. It's all in here," he said, tapping the folder in his backpack. Ben raised an eyebrow. "Wait, you mean, you really have proof?" Liam nodded. "I've been digging for weeks. My dad doesn't just want me. He wants what I'll inherit when I turn 18. That's what this is about." Ben's face lit up with realization. "So, you're going to win, right?" Liam paused. He wasn't sure if he'd win yet. But he knew he had to try. For his mother. For himself. "I'll do everything I can." Back at home that evening, while Cassandra was making dinner, Liam slipped into his room and began reviewing the documents again. He couldn't afford any mistakes. This wasn't just about a custody battle, it was a fight for his future, his right to live free from his father's shadow. He didn't have the luxury of time. Vincent was relentless. Liam had already noticed how often Vincent had hired expensive lawyers. He knew that Avery Daniels, the lawyer handling his case, wasn't going to back down. The man had a reputation for crushing people who didn't have the resources to fight back. But Liam wasn't going to let that stop him. He'd spent hours at the library, studying every detail about his father's finances and family business. There were some things he hadn't told Cassandra yet, things that could blow the entire case wide open. Liam had uncovered evidence of his father's questionable financial activities. Vincent's company, Cooper Enterprises, was a multi-million-dollar business with various holdings, and Liam had discovered that Vincent had hidden large sums of money in offshore accounts. But more than that, Liam found evidence of fraudulent financial practices that had been covered up for years. Liam wasn't naive. He knew that the legal system wasn't perfect. His father's wealth and influence could buy a lot of things, including the kind of lawyers who could make the truth look like a lie. But Liam also knew that the truth had a way of getting out, no matter how deep someone tried to bury it. As the evening grew darker, Liam spent the next few hours putting together a plan. He had a strategy, and he would need everything he had to make it work. The following week, the courtroom was set for another hearing. This time, it felt different. The weight of the last few days hung in the air like a storm about to break. Liam could feel the tension building, not just in the courtroom, but within himself. It was one thing to gather the evidence, to put everything together. It was another thing entirely to stand up and present it in front of everyone, especially in front of his father. Vincent had hired more lawyers. The courtroom had become an arena, where money, power, and manipulation were the real players. But Liam had something they didn't. He had the truth. When it was his turn to speak, Liam stood up and walked to the witness stand. The room grew quieter. He could feel Vincent's eyes on him, cold and calculating, as if he were already trying to figure out what Liam was going to do next. Liam held his head high. He wasn't afraid. "I'd like to present my evidence," Liam said, his voice calm but steady, "that proves my father's true intentions in this case." The first document Liam presented was the official family trust agreement. He didn't just wave it around like a piece of paper. He made sure the court could see exactly how the trust worked, and how it was meant to protect the child. Vincent's hands visibly shook when he saw the document. "Your Honor, this trust was set up by my grandmother, who clearly stated that the funds would only be accessible if I was in my father's care," Liam continued, "but there's something Mr. Cooper forgot to mention." Liam paused for effect, watching as Vincent's face drained of color. "This trust also stipulates that if the father's financial practices are deemed fraudulent, the trust will be dissolved and awarded to the child." Vincent's lawyer, Avery Daniels, jumped to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. This is irrelevant. The boy is trying to manipulate." But Liam was already ready with his next piece of evidence. He handed over a stack of papers. These are records from my father's company, showing his involvement in money laundering and tax evasion. I've documented every instance. The courtroom went dead silent. Vincent stood up, his face contorted with fury. This is a lie. All of this is. But before he could finish his sentence, the judge raised his hand. Mr. Cooper, sit down. This is not the time for your outbursts. Liam had him. The courtroom had never felt so quiet. Even the rustle of papers sounded too loud against the heavy silence that enveloped the room. Liam had never imagined he'd be in the middle of something like this, a legal battle that was shaping his entire future. Yet here he was, standing tall and unwavering, despite his father's determined, calculating stare. Vincent Cooper, for the first time since the trial began, looked nervous. The confident smirk that had dominated his face throughout the proceedings had disappeared. His hands gripped the edge of the table in front of him, as if holding on for dear life. His expensive suit, once immaculate, now seemed to hang loosely around him. Your Honor, Avery Daniels, Vincent's lawyer, began, his voice strained but controlled, this entire case is based on allegations. My client has been wrongfully accused of financial misconduct, and these documents presented by the boy are speculative at best. Liam didn't flinch. He had anticipated this response. They had no way of dismissing the evidence. It was too damning. The trust document, the financial records, the tax evasion details, it was all there, irrefutable. I would like to call my next witness, Liam said, cutting through the tension with a calm that surprised even him. Ms. Rodriguez. The courtroom buzzed as Mrs. Rodriguez, the head librarian at the public library, walked to the witness stand. She was the one who had taught Liam how to navigate legal databases and helped him unearth some of the most crucial evidence in this case. Ms. Rodriguez, Liam began, could you please explain how you assisted me in obtaining these financial records from Mr. Cooper's company? Ms. Rodriguez, a calm and collected woman in her mid-40s, nodded and adjusted her glasses. Yes, Your Honor. Liam came to the library several times, asking for help accessing public records. He was particularly focused on Cooper Enterprises. After several consultations with me and using the available resources, he was able to locate the company's financial filings, which are publicly accessible under state law. We verified everything together. Avery Daniels shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. This is irrelevant. The librarian is not qualified to testify about these financial records. She is not an expert in finance. Liam stood his ground. Your Honor, she's not here to testify about the finances. She's here to verify the legitimacy of how I accessed these documents, and that they are, in fact, publicly available. The judge paused, glancing at the documents before turning to Avery Daniels. Sustained. Ms. Rodriguez, please continue. Ms. Rodriguez nodded. The documents Liam presented are publicly available, and I personally assisted him in locating them. They were found in the official filings of the state's corporate records, and they are fully legitimate. Liam allowed a small but meaningful smile to cross his face as he looked at his father. Vincent's face was pale, his brow furrowed with frustration. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez, Liam said, turning to the judge. Your Honor, I would like to submit these records into evidence as part of my case. The judge gave a brief nod, signaling his approval. The records were officially entered into the trial, and for the first time, Liam felt like he had gained ground. But he knew this was far from over. As the court session ended for the day, Liam walked out into the cool Chicago air with his mother by his side. Cassandra didn't say much. She was still processing everything that had happened, still shocked by the sheer audacity of her ex-husband's actions. Liam could see her worry written on her face, and it gnawed at him. He wanted to tell her everything, to let her know that he had everything under control. But he couldn't bring himself to do it. Not yet. Mom, Liam said softly, as they walked toward the car. This isn't over. But we're winning. Cassandra glanced at him, her expression a mix of pride and worry. "I don't know what to say, Liam. You've done so much already. I'm scared for you. For us." "I know," Liam said. "But you raised me to be strong. I'm just doing what you taught me. We'll be okay. We have the truth on our side." That night, Liam couldn't sleep. His mind kept running through the events of the day, the witnesses, the documents, and the strategy he still had left to unfold. He knew that Vincent wouldn't back down easily. His father was too arrogant, too determined. But there was something Liam hadn't revealed yet, something he had kept close to his chest, waiting for the perfect moment. In the quiet of his room, Liam pulled out a small, leather-bound journal. It was a journal that had once belonged to his grandmother, Eleanor Cooper, the woman who had set up the trust that Vincent was trying so hard to control. He flipped to a page near the back, where the handwritten letter had been tucked between the pages, a letter that had been addressed to Liam. Liam's heart pounded as he read the words again. "My dear Liam. If you are reading this, it means that your father has not proven himself worthy of your trust. I know that he will come after you for the wealth I've left you, but I want you to remember something important. You are more than just my legacy. You are more than any inheritance. If your father ever tries to take what is rightfully yours, you have the resources to protect yourself. Use them wisely. I have faith in you. With love. Grandma Eleanor." Liam had read that letter over and over, but each time it hit him harder. His grandmother had known. She had seen the man Vincent truly was, even before Liam had understood. The next day, during the break in court, Liam sat quietly at a table, flipping through his grandmother's journal. He knew that the letter wasn't just a reminder of what he stood to inherit, it was a message about who he was, about the legacy of strength and integrity that ran through his veins. He had the power to fight, and he had the tools to win. But there was still one final piece he needed to reveal. During the afternoon session, after a few more back-and-forth arguments, Liam called forth one last witness. This time, it was the estate lawyer, who had overseen the creation of the trust. The estate lawyer stepped up, calm and composed. "Yes, Your Honor. The trust in question was established by the late Eleanor Cooper specifically for the benefit of her grandson, Liam. It stipulates that the inheritance would only be accessible under certain conditions, one of which was the good faith care of the child by the parent. The trust was created with specific provisions to protect the child from any financial manipulation." Avery Daniels rose to object, but the judge stopped him. "Mr. Daniels, I've seen enough. Please, proceed with your next argument." With that, the final blow was delivered. Liam had already won. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Every witness, every piece of evidence, every argument was pushing them closer to the final decision. But Liam was no longer just a child caught in a mess he didn't understand, he had become the one calling the shots. With every move, he felt more like a player in a game that had once seemed far beyond his reach. Vincent's side, however, wasn't giving up easily. Avery Daniels, his lawyer, was still trying to discredit the evidence, still trying to turn the tables. But Liam knew something that no one else had figured out yet. He wasn't done. Today would be the day he presented his final piece of evidence, the thing that would end his father's grip once and for all. He could feel it. The moment was near. The judge looked over his glasses at the weary lawyers and witnesses before him. "Let's proceed," he said, his voice calm but firm. Liam had spent the night before this session going over everything, checking and rechecking each detail of his grandmother's journal. It was her final gift to him, and he knew it held more power than anything his father could ever produce. But there was something more. Something that Vincent had tried to bury. It was the reason Vincent had ignored his son for so long. It wasn't just the trust, it was the hidden family secrets that had remained locked away, secrets that could completely destroy Vincent's last hope of winning this custody battle. Liam waited for the right moment to strike. "Your Honor," Liam's voice echoed through the courtroom as he stood up, his confidence unwavering. I have one final witness who will provide the missing link in this case. I believe it is the key to understanding my father's true motives." Vincent stiffened in his chair. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. He didn't know what Liam had left, but he could feel the noose tightening around him. Liam turned to the judge, locking eyes. "I would like to call Mr. Thomas Miller to the stand." The murmur in the room was instantaneous. Thomas Miller wasn't just anyone, he was an old business partner of Vincent's, a man who had been involved in some of the most lucrative, and most questionable, deals Vincent had ever made. Vincent's face turned a shade paler as he realized exactly who Liam was talking about. "Objection, Your Honor," he snapped. "Mr. Miller has no relevance to this case." But the judge simply raised a hand. "I'll allow the witness, Mr. Daniels. Let's proceed." The bailiff called for Thomas Miller, and a moment later, a man in his late 50s, dressed in a modest suit, entered the room. His expression was unreadable, but the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Miller sat down at the witness stand, glancing briefly at Vincent before focusing on the judge. Liam walked toward the stand, feeling the weight of what he was about to do. This was the moment. "Mr. Miller," Liam began, "can you please tell the court about your relationship with my father, Vincent Cooper?" Miller shifted in his seat but didn't seem uncomfortable. "I was a partner in Cooper Enterprises for over 15 years. I helped Vincent build his business empire." "Did you ever discuss business practices with him?" Liam asked, keeping his tone steady but firm. Miller hesitated before speaking, then nodded. "Yes, but, let's just say, not all of our methods were exactly legal." Liam's eyes flicked over to Vincent. The man's face had turned white as a sheet. But Liam wasn't finished. "Mr. Miller, can you explain to this court why you stopped working with Vincent?" Miller looked at Vincent again before speaking carefully. "I got tired of Vincent's methods. He was hiding things. Money. Information. There were deals made under the table that were never properly documented. He was using the business to cover up a lot of shady transactions. I couldn't be part of it anymore." The courtroom was silent, every eye now on Vincent, who was visibly sweating. This wasn't going the way he'd planned. "Mr. Miller, did you ever witness any fraudulent activity involving my father and the inheritance trust?" Liam pressed, his voice unwavering. Miller sighed, clearly uncomfortable but realizing this was his moment to make things right. "Yes. After Eleanor Cooper died, Vincent came to me and asked me to help him manipulate the trust. He wanted access to Liam's inheritance before he was even old enough to claim it. The goal was to have Liam in his custody so that he could use the child's future to pay off his debts. Liam didn't take his eyes off his father. "So, my father wanted me in his custody to access my inheritance?" "Yes," Miller confirmed, looking guilty. "That's exactly what he wanted." Liam turned back to the judge, his heart pounding in his chest. "Your Honor, I have here a recorded conversation between Mr. Miller and my father, discussing the plans to manipulate the inheritance." He pulled out a small recorder, holding it up for the court to see. The entire room went still. Liam pressed play. Vincent's voice could be heard clearly on the recording. "If we get Liam in my custody, the trust will be released. We'll have access to all of it, the money, the assets. He won't even know what hit him." There was a long pause in the courtroom. The weight of the moment hung in the air like a heavy fog. Liam spoke again, his voice a calm contrast to the storm unfolding. "That's my father's voice, Your Honor. He doesn't care about me. He only cares about the money." The courtroom was in chaos now. Vincent's lawyer, Avery Daniels, had no words to defend him. Vincent was trembling, his face flushed with panic. His entire plan was crumbling right in front of his eyes. "Your Honor," Avery stammered, trying to regain control, "this is a fabrication. A child should not be allowed to manipulate the court with these." But the judge interrupted, his voice sharp and final. "Mr. Daniels, I have seen enough. The evidence speaks for itself. Liam couldn't help but feel a rush of relief. The tide was turning in his favor, but he knew this wasn't over yet. The real battle would come after the trial, after the dust settled. But for now, Liam had made his point. He had shown the court who his father really was. That evening, as the court recessed for the day, Liam walked with his mother through the hallways of the courthouse. She hadn't said much during the trial, too focused on the unfolding drama. "I can't believe you did this, Liam," Cassandra said softly. "You're incredible. You've turned the tide in this battle. I don't know what to say." Liam gave her a small smile. "You don't have to say anything, Mom. I did it for us. I won't let him take you or me down." As they stepped outside into the cool night air, Cassandra's phone buzzed. She looked down at it and froze. A message from her lawyer: "Vincent is trying to pull strings behind the scenes. There's a hidden clause in his will that he's been trying to use to manipulate the case. I'll need to meet with you tomorrow to discuss it." Liam felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Was this really over? The next morning, as the sun barely peeked over the skyline of Chicago, Liam sat in the small, dimly lit office of his lawyer, Ms. Franklin. His mother, Cassandra, was on the phone with a colleague, but her face was etched with concern as she looked at Liam. He could sense she was trying to hide the worry in her eyes. "You're sure about this?" Cassandra asked, her voice low, as if she feared the very question. Liam nodded, feeling a tightness in his chest. "I know what I heard, Mom. Vincent's been hiding things for years. He's desperate. But it's all coming to light now." Just then, Miss Franklin entered the room, her expression serious but calm. She had been Liam's legal counsel ever since the trial began, but her usual confidence seemed a little shaken today. "Liam, I need to talk to you about something," Miss Franklin said, taking a seat across from him. "There's something I've just uncovered about your father's will. I didn't want to believe it, but it looks like I was wrong." Cassandra stopped pacing, her brows furrowing. "What is it?" Liam felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "Is this about the trust?" he asked, already dreading the answer. Miss Franklin sighed, nodding gravely. "Yes, but it's more than that. There's a clause, hidden deep in his will, one that was never mentioned before. It's a last-ditch effort to control everything." Liam felt his heart drop. "What kind of clause?" Miss Franklin flipped open a folder filled with legal papers. She handed a thick document to Liam, and he scanned it quickly, his eyes widening as he read. "It says here that if Vincent were to gain custody, he could claim 100% control of your inheritance, without your consent," Miss Franklin explained, her voice steady but filled with disbelief. "Essentially, he would have access to the entire trust and could manipulate how the funds are used until you turn 18. Liam's jaw tightened. He had already exposed Vincent for what he was, the manipulative father who wanted him for his wealth, but this? This was a final, terrifying step in his father's twisted plan. "So, he's been working towards this all along," Liam muttered. "Not just for the money, but to control everything I'll ever have." Cassandra stepped forward, looking at the paper in disbelief. "That's insane. How can we stop him?" Ms. Franklin placed her hands on the table, steadying herself. "That's where it gets tricky. We're going to need to go after this hidden clause directly. It's buried deep within the legal framework of the will. We're going to have to expose it, and we'll need all the evidence we can get." Liam stood up, determination flooding through him. "I've already done the hard part. Let's finish it." The next day, as the courtroom convened once again, Liam stood before the judge, feeling the weight of his actions. He knew his father was still fighting, still scheming, and there was no way he could let up now. Vincent, on the other hand, looked less confident than before. His face was drawn, tired from the long weeks of legal battles. He had been caught in his own lies, but this last clause, this hidden clause in the will, was his last chance to win. He was desperate. And desperate people did desperate things. The judge called the session to order, and the court fell silent. "Liam Cooper," the judge said, his voice deep and authoritative. "Do you have additional evidence to present today?" Liam took a breath, straightened his back, and walked toward the stand with confidence. He could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on him, but for the first time, he felt like he was in control. "Yes, Your Honor," Liam said, holding up the legal papers. "I have discovered a hidden clause in my father's will. This clause states that if I were to live with him, he could gain full control over my inheritance. He would have access to all of the money and could decide how it is spent." Gasps echoed through the room. Vincent's lawyers shot up from their seats, their faces ashen. "This is preposterous," Avery Daniels shouted. "The clause is a part of the will that was legally signed and ratified. You can't just—" "Mr. Daniels," the judge interrupted, raising a hand. "We will address this in due time. Continue, Mr. Cooper." Liam turned his attention back to the judge, unfazed by the outbursts. He knew he had the truth on his side. "I have evidence that proves my father's intentions were never about me," Liam continued. "It was always about the money. This clause shows that he's willing to use me, manipulate me, and destroy everything I stand for just to get his hands on what he believes is his." Liam looked directly at his father. "I'm not a pawn, Dad. I'm not your ticket to wealth." The room was silent. Even Vincent, despite his usual arrogance, seemed stunned. His eyes were wide, his jaw clenched tightly as if he couldn't believe what was happening. Just as Vincent's lawyer attempted to object, the judge raised a hand and addressed the court with a stern voice. "I've heard enough. Mr. Cooper," he said, addressing Vincent directly, "you will have the opportunity to explain your actions, but from what I'm hearing today, this is more than just a custody case. This appears to be a matter of fraud." Liam's heart skipped a beat. Fraud. It was a word that carried weight, and it seemed like the judge wasn't taking Vincent's actions lightly. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I'm ordering an immediate review of all financial documents relating to Cooper Enterprises and the Inheritance Trust. Any illegal activities will be fully investigated. This court will not tolerate such deceit." Vincent stood up, his face twisted with rage. "You can't do this. This is my family's business." "Enough." The judge's voice boomed. "You've already crossed too many lines. The truth is out now, Mr. Cooper. And no amount of money or manipulation will cover it up." Liam didn't need to hear anything else. The battle was nearly over. His father had fought dirty, but it was clear now, the truth had won. That night, as Cassandra and Liam sat together at the kitchen table, a quiet relief settled between them. The weight of the case had lifted, and though they both knew there was still work to be done, there was hope again. "You did it," Cassandra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You really did it." Liam smiled. "We did it, Mom. We're not just fighting for the money. We're fighting for what's right." But as he said it, Liam knew that this wasn't just about his father anymore. This was about showing that truth and integrity, even in the face of unimaginable odds, could still win. And no matter how hard Vincent tried, nothing could change that. The next few days felt like an eternity. Despite the judge's ruling, despite the evidence, the sense of urgency hadn't faded. Vincent, who had once seemed so untouchable, was now backed into a corner. But Liam knew better than anyone that a man with nothing to lose was the most dangerous opponent. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of papers in front of him. His mind raced, his thoughts bouncing between the case, his father, and what was at stake. This wasn't just about winning the case, it was about taking back control of his life and ensuring his mother's future. "Mom," Liam said, glancing up from the papers. "We're not done yet." Cassandra looked up from the stove, a tired smile tugging at the corners of her lips. She hadn't asked for this battle, and every day she carried the burden of knowing just how close her son was to losing everything. But now, with everything Liam had done, she couldn't help but feel a growing sense of hope. "I know, Liam," she replied softly. "But you've done so much already. I just want to make sure you're okay. You don't have to carry this all on your own." Liam shook his head, setting the papers down. "I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. We've come too far to stop now." The courtroom reconvened the following Monday, and the air was thick with anticipation. Word had spread about Vincent's underhanded tactics, his manipulation of the trust, and his shady business dealings. It seemed like everything he'd worked for was slowly crumbling around him. But in this game, he wasn't going down without a fight. As the judge entered the room, everyone fell silent. The tension was unbearable, and Liam could feel the weight of every eye in the room. It wasn't just a courtroom, it felt like a battlefield. The judge, Judge Stevens, was a no-nonsense kind of man. He had seen enough family drama in his career to last a lifetime, but even he seemed affected by the severity of this case. "Mr. Cooper," the judge began, his voice echoing through the courtroom, "we have uncovered a great deal in this case. But I would like to hear from you directly. What do you have to say in your defense regarding the fraudulent activities and the manipulation of your child's inheritance?" Vincent stood up slowly, his face a mask of fury and desperation. His earlier composure had cracked, and his voice wavered slightly as he began to speak. "Your Honor," he started, his tone forced and rehearsed, "I have done what was necessary to secure my son's future. I made some business decisions that, yes, might have been aggressive. But I only wanted what was best for him. Liam is my son. I love him, and I want to provide for him." Liam could barely contain his disgust. He had heard this speech before, these empty words, these hollow excuses. His father had never loved him. Not really. If he had, he wouldn't have spent 9 years neglecting him only to return when money was at stake. The judge raised his hand, silencing Vincent. "I have heard enough, Mr. Cooper. Your actions speak for themselves." Turning to Liam, the judge continued, "Liam, do you have any final statements before I issue my ruling?" Liam took a deep breath, his mind flashing back to everything he had uncovered, everything his father had tried to steal from him. But this was about more than money. This was about who he was, who he could become, and the kind of life he wanted to lead. "Your Honor," Liam began, his voice steady and strong, "I'm not a pawn in my father's game. I'm a person. I've fought to protect my future, not for money, not for a trust, but for the right to live my life on my own terms. My father doesn't care about me. He only cares about what I can give him." The room was silent as Liam finished, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Vincent's face flushed with anger. "You don't know what you're talking about," he snapped. "You're just a child." Liam stood his ground. "No, Dad. You're the one who's been childish. And now, you'll have to face the consequences." As the judge began to deliberate, Vincent's lawyer, Avery Daniels, stood up abruptly. "Your Honor," he said, his voice calm but urgent, "we would like to submit new evidence, an affidavit signed by Mr. Cooper's business associates. It claims that the documents presented by the plaintiff are incomplete and have been manipulated to mislead the court." Liam's heart skipped a beat. He had anticipated this kind of last-minute maneuver. Avery Daniels wasn't going to give up, and he wasn't going to let Vincent lose without a fight. The judge paused, his gaze narrowing. "Mr. Daniels, are you saying that the evidence presented by the plaintiff has been altered?" Avery nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. We have proof that the documents presented by Mr. Cooper's son were falsified. They were edited to make Mr. Cooper look guilty of crimes he didn't commit." Liam's mind raced. This was a move straight out of Vincent's playbook, one last attempt to discredit everything he had worked so hard to uncover. But Liam wasn't going to let it work. Not this time. "Your Honor," Liam said, standing up. "If my father wants to play that game, we can. But the truth is, his lies have been exposed. I have the original documents, unmodified, unaltered. I can prove that everything I've shown this court is the truth. If Mr. Cooper and his lawyer want to keep playing these games, I'll be ready. The judge looked over the new affidavit and then at the documents Liam had presented earlier. He paused for a long moment, and the courtroom held its breath. Finally, the judge spoke. I will take a short recess before issuing my ruling. We will reconvene in 1 hour. Liam walked out of the courtroom, his thoughts racing. It wasn't over yet. His father was still fighting, still pulling strings behind the scenes, and Liam knew that the moment the judge made his ruling, Vincent would do everything in his power to turn things around. But for the first time in a long while, Liam felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. He wasn't alone. His mother was there. His friends were behind him. And no matter what, he had the truth on his side. The recess felt like an eternity. Liam sat in the hallway of the courthouse, his hands tightly clasped together. His mind raced, running over everything that had happened so far, the accusations, the proof, his father's desperate attempts to manipulate the system. His thoughts kept circling back to one thing: his future. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for the life he deserved, the one his mother had worked so hard to build. His victory wasn't just about getting away from his father, it was about freedom. The door to the courtroom creaked open, and Ms. Franklin stepped out, her face as unreadable as ever. Liam, she said, walking over to him, the judge is ready to make his ruling. Liam stood up, his pulse quickening. Do you think it's over? She hesitated for a moment, then placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. The evidence is in your favor, Liam. But you know how this works: Vincent won't go down without a fight. But you've done everything right. His mother, Cassandra, joined them in the hallway, her eyes wide with concern. Are we ready? She asked, her voice tight with emotion. Liam nodded. We're ready. They made their way back into the courtroom, the atmosphere heavier than ever. As they entered, Vincent was already seated at his table, his expression dark, his eyes locked on Liam. But for once, it wasn't the intimidating glare of a man who thought he had the upper hand. It was the look of a man who knew he was losing. The judge, Judge Stevens, entered the room, and the noise in the courtroom died immediately. He made his way to the bench and looked at both parties before speaking. After reviewing all the evidence presented in this case, I have come to a decision, the judge said, his voice calm but carrying an undeniable weight. This has been a complex case, but the facts are clear. Liam's heart raced as the judge continued. Vincent Cooper, the judge said, looking directly at Liam's father, your actions in this case have been unacceptable. It is clear that you have manipulated, deceived, and attempted to exploit your son for your own financial gain. Liam's father's face turned a shade of red, his jaw clenched tight. He stood up, but the judge immediately silenced him with a raised hand. Mr. Cooper, Judge Stevens continued, I have also reviewed the hidden clause in your will, which further demonstrates your intent to control your son's inheritance under false pretenses. This kind of behavior cannot, and will not, be tolerated in this court. Vincent's face twisted with rage. He opened his mouth to speak, but the judge cut him off. I've heard enough, Mr. Cooper. You will be held accountable for your actions. Liam felt a rush of relief wash over him. His father's grip was slipping, and there was nothing he could do to stop it now. Judge Stevens turned to Liam, his gaze softening. Liam Cooper, despite the manipulation you've endured, you've demonstrated remarkable strength, intelligence, and bravery. I commend you for standing up for yourself and your future. Your actions have shown me that you are capable of making your own decisions. Liam took a deep breath. This was it. His future was about to be decided. Based on the evidence, and in the best interest of your welfare, I am ruling in favor of your mother, Cassandra Cooper, for sole custody. Vincent Cooper will not be granted any custody rights. Furthermore, I am ordering a full investigation into your father's financial dealings and his attempt to manipulate the trust for his own gain. Liam's heart leapt in his chest. The weight that had been pressing down on him for months finally lifted. His father had lost. The judge turned to the bailiff. "Mr. Cooper, please step down. You will be removed from the courtroom." Vincent stood motionless for a moment, his face a mask of fury. But then, slowly, he turned and walked toward the door, escorted by a pair of security officers. Liam watched him go, but it wasn't a feeling of triumph that filled him. It was relief. Freedom. The courtroom was silent as the judge adjourned the hearing. Liam and his mother stood up, walking out of the room side by side, their hands clasped tightly together. The moment they stepped out of the courthouse, Cassandra pulled him into a tight hug, her voice trembling with emotion. "You did it, Liam. We did it." Liam held her tight. "We did, Mom. We're free." But as they stepped outside into the bright sunshine, Liam knew that while this chapter was closed, the battle wasn't completely over. His father would never truly leave them alone. But for now, they had won. And that was enough. The following weeks were filled with paperwork, lawyers, and meetings. The investigation into Vincent's financial dealings was extensive, uncovering even more fraudulent activities than anyone had imagined. He faced multiple charges, from tax evasion to conspiracy, and was eventually forced to settle with the authorities. His reputation, what little was left of it, was destroyed. But despite everything, Liam didn't feel angry anymore. He had learned that victory wasn't about fighting with hatred, it was about standing up for what was right, even when the odds seemed impossible. Liam stood in front of his bedroom mirror, looking at himself. It was hard to believe how far he had come. Just a few months ago, he had been a scared child, unsure of where his life was heading. Now, he was standing tall, knowing that no matter what came next, he had the strength to face it. "You ready?" Cassandra called from the hallway, a bright smile on her face. Liam grinned, adjusting his shirt. "Yeah, I'm ready." The two of them walked down the stairs together, side by side. For the first time in a long while, they had hope. And hope was the strongest thing they could have ever asked for. As they reached the front door, there was a knock. Cassandra opened it, and standing in front of her was Ms. Rodriguez, the librarian who had helped Liam so much during the trial. "I just wanted to give you this," Ms. Rodriguez said, handing Liam a small package. Liam opened it to find a letter from his grandmother, Eleanor Cooper. It wasn't just any letter. This one was written specifically for Liam, and it was the final piece of the puzzle. The letter revealed that his grandmother had set up a fund for Liam's future education, a legacy meant to ensure that no matter what, Liam would have the tools to build the life he deserved. Liam smiled, reading the final lines. "You are capable of great things, Liam. No one can take that away from you. You have the power to change the world." With that, Liam knew he had more than just a victory. He had a future. The months following the ruling were both a whirlwind and a slow, steady climb back to normalcy for Liam and his mother. It felt like everything had happened all at once, Vincent's downfall, the trial, and the crushing weight of knowing they were finally free. But despite the battles fought and won, it wasn't always easy to pick up the pieces and move forward. Liam sat at his desk, the glow of his desk lamp casting a warm light over the stacks of papers before him. In front of him was the application for Harvard University, a scholarship that had come to him out of nowhere, or so it seemed. He glanced at the clock. It was already late, but the thought of the future was all-consuming. The letters from his grandmother had become a guiding force for him, a source of strength and direction. "Are you sure about this?" Cassandra asked, peeking into his room. She knew the importance of this moment for Liam, but a part of her still struggled to believe how much had changed in such a short time. Liam looked up, a smile tugging at his lips. "I've been ready for this my whole life." "I think she was right, Mom. There's a lot I still want to do. I won't let anything stop me now." Cassandra walked into the room and sat on the edge of his bed, looking at her son. "You know, sometimes I forget how much strength you've had through all of this. You're not just growing up, Liam. You're changing the world." Liam's smile faded slightly as he thought about his journey. It's been a long road. But I couldn't have done any of it without you. The day Liam received his acceptance letter to Harvard was a blur. He and his mother hugged each other so tightly that it almost felt like time had stopped. This wasn't just an acceptance to one of the most prestigious schools in the country, it was the culmination of years of sacrifice, resilience, and a fight for what was right. But it wasn't the end. In fact, it was just the beginning. Weeks later, when the time came to leave for Boston, Cassandra stood by the door, trying hard to hold back tears. This was the moment she had known was coming, but it didn't make it any easier. She had raised Liam on her own, poured every ounce of love and sacrifice into his future, and now, that future was unfolding before her eyes. "I'm proud of you, Liam," she said softly, her voice trembling. "So proud." Liam, standing in the doorway with his backpack slung over his shoulder, gave her a grin that was a mixture of excitement and the quiet confidence that had always defined him. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom." They shared one last hug before he stepped out the door, ready to take the next step in his journey. As Liam settled into his new life at Harvard, he found himself constantly reflecting on how far he had come. There were moments when the weight of everything he had endured threatened to overwhelm him. But then, he remembered his grandmother's letter. He wasn't just a victim of circumstance, he was the result of a legacy of strength, resilience, and the unshakable belief that the truth could always win. He threw himself into his studies, focusing on political science and law, driven by a desire to help others who found themselves in situations like his. He had already seen how the legal system could be manipulated, but he also saw how one voice, one person, could make all the difference. It wasn't long before Liam found his passion for justice and advocacy growing into something more. He began volunteering at local legal aid organizations, helping people who didn't have the resources to fight for themselves. He wanted to use the power of the law to protect the vulnerable, just as he had once done for himself and his mother. One afternoon, as he was walking across campus, he ran into Ms. Rodriguez, the librarian who had helped him during the trial. Her warm smile greeted him, and she was quick to ask about how things had been going. "I'm so proud of you, Liam," she said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "I remember when you first came to me asking about those legal books. It's amazing to see what you've become." Liam smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "You were a huge part of this, Ms. Rodriguez. You helped me believe that knowledge was the key to everything." Ms. Rodriguez nodded. "I always knew you had it in you. And now look at you, you're making a real difference." One night, as Liam was sitting at his desk, studying for his finals, his phone buzzed. It was a text from his mom. "Just wanted to remind you how proud I am of you. The world is yours now. Don't let anything stop you." Liam read the message and smiled. His mother had been his rock through everything, and now, she was watching him from afar, cheering him on. As he closed his textbook and looked out the window, he couldn't help but think about how much had changed. The battle for his future had been hard fought, but it had led him to this moment, where he felt like he could truly make a difference. Just as he was about to head to bed, another message popped up on his phone, this time from a number he didn't recognize. He hesitated before opening it. "Liam, I need to speak with you. It's about your father. There's something I never told you, something that might change everything you thought you knew. Call me when you can." Liam's breath caught in his throat. The message was from a private investigator who had been working on his father's case. After everything that had happened, could there still be something more to uncover? A few weeks after receiving the mysterious message, Liam sat in a small cafe in Boston, across from the investigator who had reached out to him. The investigator handed Liam a file. As he flipped through the documents, he realized something shocking. Vincent's empire wasn't as destroyed as everyone had believed. Hidden assets, money funneled through multiple shell companies, and an intricate web of lies still existed. But this time, it wasn't about Liam's inheritance, it was about exposing the full extent of his father's wrongdoings to protect others who might fall victim to his schemes. Liam looked up at the investigator. Let's do this. Let's make sure no one else gets hurt by his greed. As Liam left the cafe, a wave of determination surged through him. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. But Liam Cooper knew that no matter where life took him, he would always fight for justice. And this time, the fight was just beginning. This final chapter and epilogue bring the story to a satisfying conclusion, showing how Liam, despite overcoming his father's attempts to manipulate him, continues on his path to fight for justice. The story ends with the possibility of future challenges, showing that while the personal battle is over, Liam's journey has just begun. The epilogue opens the door to future adventures, keeping the audience intrigued and hopeful about Liam's next steps. Let me know if you need any more adjustments or if you'd like to dive into another story.